Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries channel. Today we're doing a quick video on the newest signing in the Premier League. It's Kalvin Phillips. He's gone to Manchester City. He looks to be the Fernandinho replacement. We'll get onto his data though as to why he's such an amazing and unique player. But Ben, let's go into his injury record, because last season, along with a lot of the other Leeds players, he had a hell of a lot of problems. He saw a lot of time on the bench, in the treatment room. I mean, is there concerns? Can you just talk through some of that injury data first and foremost?
Yeah, I mean, the big issue for Kalvin Phillips, of course, was that hamstring injury that required a surgical intervention. And in the grand scheme of things, it isn't a massive issue for Kalvin Phillips. Typically, we see a player who is fairly robust, who does play a high number of games in terms of his availability, in terms of his minutes prior to that. But, we need to contextualise everything, as we always do. And Kalvin Phillips was pivotal in that England squad for the Euro 2020, which would have impacted on his Leeds season. So first and foremost, he made 7 starts for England during that tournament. Only John Stones was only played more minutes as an outfield player. But in terms of distance covered, nobody got anywhere close to Kalvin Phillips, over 82 kilometres across those 7 games. And again, to give you some kind of insight into where the rest of the team were, Harry Kane was sitting just behind that at around about 6 kilometres less. And then 4 behind that, you had Raheem Sterling, and it was around about 14 kilometres. So it was huge, and then you factor in the Marcelo Bielsa, that plan A, it's full on, balls to the wall, heavy metal football, high energy, high intensity that, requires massive energy output on the back of a heavily disrupted pre-season. And it comes as no surprise, given that the injury problems that Leeds had. And we talk about that risk and reward and players being, maybe pushed when, they didn't really need to be. And that's why it broke down in December.
Let's go through this then. So the type of injury that he had, is there a high risk of re-injury? Is this something that Manchester City are going to be able to manage going forward?
Well, first and foremost, City will do their due diligence here. They've got a superb medical team. And in terms of their recruitment, we see season on season, despite the high number of competitive games that they play and those tight fixture schedules, they always feature very favourably on the injury table. In fact, in terms of non-contact injuries, so those soft tissue and muscle tears, Manchester City actually had the fewest this season. So in terms of their recruitment and their medical, their doctor, their physios, their sports strength and conditioning coaches, they'll be coming together and they'll be looking at those issues around sort of Kalvin Phillips. And, when this transfer does actually complete, you're going to expect that all of that's been done in, and there are no sort of long-term real concerns with regards to his fitness and his availability. Again, if you want to give a little bit of context around players who suffered similar types of problems in recent years, Harry Kane being one at Tottenham, he's come back. Maybe he had a little bit of a slow start the season because of the Euros, but finished very strongly. Tariq Lamptey, he's the one that has been managed by Graham Potter last season on the back of his hamstring problem. But Mikel Antonio in the past, to name just a few there.
And in terms of his hardiness then, is Kalvin Phillips better at returning from injuries as well than maybe the average sort of player?
Yeah, so in particular, if we focus on that hamstring injury in particular, that was in and around 106 days. Now, different players, they're never like for like injuries, but typically it's an injury that we would expect to see maybe closer towards that 4-month mark. Certainly we've seen injuries go way beyond that. So in the grand scheme of things, Kalvin Phillips certainly featured in that lower percentile in terms of a quick return from injury.
Let's turn it then to the fact that he's joined pretty early in the transfer window, so he's going to have a full pre-season. Is this going to combat any deconditioning that he felt from that extensive timeout and actually see him, really get some good fitness in his legs to play his very kind of aggressive pressing style?
Yeah, I mean, all the research will point towards this pivotal time in the football in Canada, the preseason program. It forms the cornerstone of every, upcoming season. And the more sessions, the more work, the more games that you're involved in during this period of time, that will set you up for the remainder of the season. And that reduces the risk of injury incidents.
And also, I guess, analysing the fact that Manchester City have such an amazing depth in their squad, there's going to have the less stress on the risk-reward situation there. As you said, at Leeds, he was fantastic. He was integral, but they didn't really have somebody that could replace him. So if there is a question mark over his fitness, that he might not even be the first starter each game week, because they do, in fact, have Rodri there, don't they?
Yeah, look, we touched upon it just before. Marcelo Bielsa didn't have that strength and depth of his squad. Kalvin Phillips was pivotal in that midfield, and his absence for that sustained period was probably reflective of one or two others why Leeds struggled so badly and just managed to stay up at the death. But like I say, you look at that injury record at Manchester City, you look how Pep and his team manage his squad in terms of rotation, and of course style comes in that as well. It's not going to be that all-out 100% press constantly. There may be a more conservative style of play with Manchester City, and that of course will help the likes of Kalvin Phillips greatly.
And so I guess the final thing as well is it'll be interesting to see how he is deployed, because Rodri is more kind of like a Busquets kind of defensive midfielder. He's good at the interceptions. He's good at reading the game and maybe not needing to make a pressing tackle every so often because he's just in the right place at the right time. Whereas if you look at Kalvin Phillips, he's in the top 2% for pressures per 90 across Europe's top 5 leagues. He's very aggressive. It's his style of play. Does that also mean, though, because he is so on the front foot, that he is more likely to get these sorts of injuries?
Fatigue's a massive factor when we come back to, soft tissue tears and muscles. So, we go back to Leeds, the fact that squad was stretched, players were maybe risked when ordinarily, you would like to sit them out. That's huge contributing factors. You're not going to get that at Manchester City. If you start a Phillips, you've got a Rodri in the wings. You can play a De Bruyne in there. There's so much flexibility and fluidity within that squad. There's no necessary need to take any risk with the players because, Pep can effectively have two very strong starting 11s, such as, the quality of the players at his disposal.
Well, I hope people have found that an interesting insight into another big signing in the Premier League. As always, you can message us if you have questions about any other of the big signings that we have seen so far in the transfer window. But for now, I'm just going to remind you, please do subscribe to the channel, do leave the video a like, and we will see you again very, very soon.